Then another lesser known, but also fascinating theory on interpreting Genesis 1, and this is called the gap theory. The gap theory. So here's what they believe. They would say there is a gap of untold length, billions of years perhaps, between the beginning of Genesis 1:1 and the first day of creation, starting with Genesis 1:3. And so, like we said, in the Bible, it talks about how in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Now, the earth was formless and void. The Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the deep. And so it's like, that's a weird little interjection there. Like, what's going on there? People in this camp would say, yeah, that's a gap. There is this gap where God created the world initially, and then something happened, and then God recreated the world, starting with God said, let there be light. Okay, verse 1 refers to the original creation of the earth and the universe in the beginning, not the world that we see it now. There was this initial pre-creation creation. And so the fossils of things like dinosaurs and stuff like that, that's all what was in the original creation. And current living creatures come from this second creation after the gap, when God made them in 6 literal days, 6,000 to 12,000 years ago. All right, why would anyone want to believe this view? Again, it allows for the commonly accepted scientific understanding of the age of the Earth and the fossil record. Someone says the Earth is billions of years old. Sure it is. The gap was billions of years long. Fossils seem to suggest that dinosaurs and humans never interacted. Absolutely, because dinosaurs were part of the gap and humans were created after the gap. And again, it's because there's like this weirdness in the text. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And then God said, let there be light. And there was light. This also allows for things like creation of angels and demons, Satan falling from heaven. Uh, we don't have a real clear timeline on that from anywhere else in the biblical text. We have kind of references to it in Isaiah and Ezekiel, and then Jesus himself and in Revelation. And so the gap theory provides a time for that. When were angels created, and when did Satan rebel against God, and when that happened during the gap? Okay, and then God created the world as we see it now. Also, there is precedent for God doing this because he, in a lot of ways, kind of has this second creation narrative after the flood. There's a lot of parallels in Genesis 9 and Genesis 1, and we see Noah as this like second Adam figure. And so this idea that like God would destroy everything and start again, maybe he did it before the flood. Maybe he did it during the gap. Um, Arguments against this. I mean, it's a lot of argument from silence, right? Like there it doesn't say that there was a gap. It's kind of this implication in the text that because that verse is kind of a little bit odd sounding, well, maybe there's this other whole thing that happened. But none of it's actually in the Bible as it's being laid out. So that's a challenge. Also, again, you deal with the animal death before the fall, if that's something that matters. And again, there's also that question, kind of like with appearance of age, if like, is God being deceptive somehow in hinting at this kind of stuff without actually telling us any of it? Um, it's a curiosity. It shouldn't come as any surprise. This theory became kind of popular when dinosaur fossils were first being discovered, and they were starting to realize that like these giant, crazy, terrible, scary lizards must have once walked the earth. And it shouldn't be surprising that people were like, well, clearly they're like related to demons because they're really scary. And God wouldn't want that as part of like the goodness of creation. How could dinosaurs be good? And so they kind of put them away into this little category of like, well, they must have existed in the gap before things were good. And I think, that might be shortchanging dinosaurs, perhaps. So yeah, to summarize, gap theory, old Earth, God created a world and then recreated it. There's this gap in the first verses of Genesis 1. What do we do with the dinosaurs? They existed, did not coexist with man. They existed during the gap.